No one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. And across the channel, another voice cautioned that liberty survives only when power should be a check to power. Those two ideas, John Locke's natural rights and Montesquieu's separation of powers, leapt the Atlantic in the 18th century. They found fertile ground in a society of small meeting houses and big forests, of shipyards and slave markets, of noisy print shops and quiet farmsteads. When those words reached American ears, they didn't land softly. They struck like flint on dry tinder.
Nice. That sounded good.
Yeah, your French was excellent.
That's right.
I know no one can see us right now, but if they could, they would be incredibly impressed with these headphones that we have on.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Now
mean,
you
I'm
guys
sorry.
can
I just sat
hear
on
it.
a horn. That was what that was. I'm so sorry.
we look legit.
We look
and
pros.
I think we
We look like
probably
pros.
we sound legit too.
I hope so. I mean, I think that our first go around, having listened back to it, I do understand I went a little too far with all of the new buttons. So I'm really going to try to practice
Wow.
some restraint
No.
today.
Good for you.
No,
Good for you.
Never.
Okay, so welcome back to A Push for All. If you couldn't tell from that amazing introduction, we're tracing how a set of big ideas collided with a complicated world. We've got Enlightenment reason alongside evangelical revival, migration and indentured servitude alongside the rise of slavery, tobacco and rice rising up and creating wealth right next to a new merchant class and expanding merchant networks. Finally, a colonial battle that's going to grow into really the first global war, ending with a new imperial map redrawn and rebellion simmering.
And by the time we hit 1763, you're going to see why these three things have something in common: a sermon, a science experiment, and a skirmish in the Ohio Valley. Somehow, all three of those things belong in the same story. Okay, so the colonies didn't become British America without people crossing oceans. And in the 17th and early 18th centuries, there was a huge share of English migrants to the Chesapeake. And they came as indentured servants, and they were contracted to work 4 to 7 years in exchange for their passage. And so they're going to shape the tobacco frontier. They're going to clear fields, they're going to harvest leaves, and they're going to hope that one day they'll get their freedom dues at the end of their term. But the risks are huge for coming across like this. There's disease, there's exploitation by those who are indenturing you, and if these indentured servants survived, a scramble for land in a region increasingly claimed by wealthy planters.
Yeah, what's the guy we give the document in class? The indentured servant who's writing to his parents. What's his name?
Oh,
Gosh.
he hates his life.
So
Oh my gosh, yeah.
For anyone out there who's not lucky enough to be in our classes, we give some documents from indentured servants to our students, and they get to read about just how horrible conditions could be for indentured servants. This guy in particular, his name will any second now.
Richard Fethorn.
Richard.
Oh, that's right.
Poor Richard.
He writes to his loving, kind father and mother. He says, "This is to let you understand that I, your child, am in a most heavy case by reason of the scurvy and the bloody flux and diverse other diseases. And when we are sick, there is nothing to comfort us. For since I came out of the ship, I never ate anything but peas and water gruel. We live in fear of the enemy every hour, yet we have had a combat with them, and we took 2 alive and made slaves of them. You would be grieved if you did know as much as I do. When people cry out day and night, oh, that they were in England without their limbs, and would not care to lose any limb to be in England again." So he's basically begging to go back to England. Anything would be better than
Not
colonial
your
Chesapeake.
usual letter home to mom and dad from summer camp.
He's eating all that gruel, and he's got disease, and of course,
It's not like the cute letter from that Super Bowl commercial. Hello, mother. Hello,
right.
Father.
Right, it's not that.
Flea sticks, mosquitoes. Really, Father?
No, it's not that at
Such a
all.
cute puppy
Instead,
commercial.
he's really
Aw.
begging for someone to save him. And I always ask if my students realize when he says that the enemy is attacking, he means, of course, that natives are attacking.
Sure.
And they tried to take them. No wonder they're attacking. They took them as slaves. But yeah, so it's not great to be an indentured servant. But at least they had this hope that maybe if they could last long enough, they too would get a bunch of land and become a wealthy landowner.
Yeah.
By the early 1700s, though, racial slavery had started to harden into law and practice, this hereditary, lifelong, and violently enforced, which we covered in an earlier podcast, that transition to racial slavery. But the passage of, or the journey that Africans took from their homelands, often to the Caribbeans and then to some of the mainland ports, is known as the Middle Passage. And this is when ships were absolutely packed with human cargo. Disease would run rampant. One formerly enslaved sailor, Aluda Equiano, recalled the stench and terror below decks, writing of the, quote, loathsomeness of the stench and the shrieks of the women, the groans of the dying. So this is horrific conditions where really the goal was to pack as many people on a boat as possible, knowing that many would die, and just assuming that you would have enough to make a nice little profit when you reach the mainland. But it's a window into a system that was not incidental to colonial life. It was fundamental, especially in Chesapeake tobacco and Carolina rice economies.
And those enslaved people had agency. They resisted. In 1739, near the Stono River in South Carolina, you had dozens of enslaved Africans seizing weapons, marching under a makeshift banner, and heading for Spanish Florida and promised freedom. The Stono Rebellion was ultimately crushed. The aftermath brought tighter slave codes and patrols, but it did have the effect of terrifying the white elite and revealed what everyone already knew. Coercion was fragile, and a system built on violence feared the very people it exploited.
And at the same time, there's so much going on throughout all of the colonies. Actually, non-English migrants are going to start arriving too, and notably the Scots-Irish, many of whom are going to settle in the back country from Pennsylvania down the Great Wagon Road. I hope we still have a road that's named that.
The Great Wagon Road.
Yes.
Yeah. I believe the Paxton boys maybe have traversed the Great
Most
Wagon
likely.
Road.
And yes, and these Scots-Irish, they're going to value autonomy. They're going to clash with the coastal elites, and they're going to live in daily proximity to native nations, which is going to cause a lot of conflict. And so that sort of frontier world is going to result in raids, retaliation, negotiated coexistence, and it's all going to make more sense once we get to the French and Indian War.
So the real goal here is to follow the money. And if you do, you'll see a set of regional economies that were different but ultimately connected. So in the Chesapeake, we've got tobacco. Tobacco is king. When we say Chesapeake, we're talking about Virginia and Maryland primarily. It just so happened that tobacco, a particular strain of tobacco, grew incredibly well in this area. And so tobacco is really going to take off and therefore became this prime cash crop. And it's going to lead to planter elites, this new class of planter elites who are going to leverage labor and land in order to export a crop that paid for all kinds of finished British goods and also, of course, defined the social hierarchies of the region. But if you move a little bit further into the lower south, you'll find rice and then a little bit later indigo, a dye that really is only possible with a lot of skilled but also brutal work conditions in terrible swamps where lots of people caught all kinds of diseases like malaria. Of course, the planters would live in homes up in the high country, high above their plantations, but it was the slaves who would toil in these swamps. And this task system that planters put into place required just unbelievable amounts of work that would shape plantation life in distinctive and damaging ways.
So that was the South. In New England, in the middle colonies, you see a very different picture. You see smaller farms, lumber. I think
So sorry.
probably most of the British Navy is going to be built from timber that's extracted from this region. Fish, cod and cod, right? In those
Yeah,
New
oh
England
yeah.
colonies. Oh, yeah. So shipbuilding, as I mentioned, and crucially, commerce. So New England merchants would stitch together Atlantic trade circuits. Rum, one of Jack Sparrow's favorites.
Yeah.
But where's the rum? Right? Yeah, that wasn't a very good Jack
I
Sparrow.
thought that was
You
pretty
know,
good.
I think you could do better.
I think you do
Okay.
better. But where's the no? Okay, I've got to get in this. Okay, it'll come back to me in a second.
Sure.
Okay, so rum produced in New England could be exchanged in West Africa. Enslaved Africans were then sold in the Caribbean. Sugar and molasses flowed back to make more rum. And it's not a simple geometric triangle. Think web, not triangle. But the idea here captures the essence interdependence across the ocean.
And all of this is going to lead to a consumer revolution in the American colonies. Colonists, they want everything. They want to buy, they want to spend, they want to buy tea, they want to buy ceramics, textiles, printed cottons, the stuff of British identity and social aspiration for many colonists. And that consumption it's going to end up pulling colonists even deeper into imperial markets that are driven by the British and also the regulations that the British are going to pass attempting to control colonial commerce. And we've talked about the Navigation Acts, 3 versions of them trying to regulate this commerce, but not doing a great job because of salutary neglect. And now we're going to have debates over smuggling and customs officials. And so by mid-century, bustling port cities like Boston, Newport, Rhode Island, New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston, they're not just going to be places of wealth and commerce, but also they're going to be places of public debate about the colonies and their role in all of this.
Okay. So everybody close your eyes.
Okay.
I'm going to take you back in time. I want you to imagine that you're walking through a colonial port. Boston, maybe it's New York, Philadelphia perhaps, or maybe down south in Charleston. And you hear the rhythm of hammers in a shipyard, the slap of halyards in the wind. I assume that was a mistake that you pressed that button.
It was not a mistake.
You could hear crickets there too.
Yeah, there's crickets.
It
probably.
could be twilight.
It's twilight, yeah.
You know.
And from a narrow street, you catch the clang of a hand press. Inside, printers are inking their type or typing their ink or something like that. And they lock forms, they pull sheets, and next thing you know, you've got pamphlets.
Thank you, Johann Gutenberg.
And you've got newspapers.
Wow.
And these newspapers are filled with essays arguing about liberty, law, property, and power. Benjamin Franklin, he's got his almanacs. Everybody, almanacs are great.
Yeah, I just saw the Farmer's Almanac,
Farmer's
the newest
Almanac?
edition, when I was
What's it
checking
called?
out at Walgreens the
What's
other
it
day.
calling for? How's the winter?
I
gonna be?
didn't purchase one.
I've heard we're in for a heck of a winter.
I hope so.
Oh boy,
I love snow.
I love it. Let's go.
I do too. So we got Franklin and his almanacs, and all of this print culture is feeding a public that's hungry for ideas, practical know-how, but also interested in engaging in talks about natural philosophy, which increasingly is becoming fashionable. And there's also talks about electricity and experiments and all kinds of societies dedicated to improving the world.
And these words are going to matter because in the American colonies, we actually have a pretty unusual literacy rate that leads to an audience who can actually read all of these things, especially in New England, where white male literacy, it was among the highest in the Atlantic world. And by the mid-1700s, this was really helping to create a culture of debate, right? You have to be able to read and to write and to think in order to debate ideas. So the Enlightenment for the colonies, it wasn't just a seminar, it was a street level and shop floor tavern-esque type of situation for the colonies where Locke's, famous social contract theory, Montesquieu's theory of checks and balances. These are all going to be debated in the taverns, in the coffee houses, in the shops, on the square. And when these ideas ran into colonial realities like governors, assemblies, juries, taxes, something new is going to take shape. It's going to be a habit of questioning authority.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you seen that there's been some studies that have come out that is now showing that we now read less as a society than we ever have in modern history. That people are reading less overall than they think we ever have since going back into these colonial times.
I believe it.
I believe it too. I think a lot more people are listening or watching. And so, yeah, the reading's a lot less.
I think the intake of information is probably more, but the actual reading of information as taking in information, I think that's less. So powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And then when this is bubbling to the surface, all of these ideas, you enter John Peter Zenger in 1735. Zinger's paper criticized the New York governor, and he was charged with seditious libel. His lawyer, none other than Andrew Hamilton, actually.
I wonder if they were related.
I think they
doubt it.
I don't know.
Maybe.
No, yeah,
they
based
were
on-
not related because
Yeah, based on
Alexander
his
Hamilton
experience.
was, how does a bastard,
Orphan,
son of a...
Good for you guys.
Wait, where was your...
I was worried you
I
were
thought
going
you were going to use a sound
Son of a.
to. Yeah. I mean,
So-
Disney shows it, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah, okay.
True.
Okay. Yeah, Disney. There's nothing wrong with that. So, so Hamilton, his lawyer, he told the jury that the truth should be a defense, and they acquitted Zinger. This is groundbreaking stuff. And in doing so, they established a powerful press freedom precedent in colonial political culture. The law wouldn't fully adopt quote unquote truth as a defense for libel until later, but it's a baby step. It's a new political norm that shifts into being. Public officials should answer to public criticism, and this wasn't just legal, it was cultural. It taught colonists to expect to speak their minds and to expect power to answer back. So we were talking about reason, and the Enlightenment and logic and all that stuff. But the 1730s and the 1740s, they also pulsed with revival, intensity, emotion. The Great Awakening was a religious movement that democratized faith. It cut across colonies and denominations. It would elevate personal conversion and challenged dead formalism. So you had people like Jonathan Edwards, who warned that sinners were held over the pit of hell as one holds a spider about to be cast into the flames of hell. And this literally scared the hell out of people. And so he's producing this vivid image of divine judgment paired with a promise of grace. So mind your P's and Q's. So George Whitefield, also akin to what Jonathan Edwards was doing, preached up and down the seaboard. He drew massive outdoor crowds, no microphone, but tens of thousands of people, right? Even skeptics marveled at his voice and his charisma.
And here's the key. We're thinking about this emergence of an American identity, and both the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening are going to help with that emerging identity because colonists are going to start questioning established authority. For Enlightenment figures, reason and natural rights are going to test traditional hierarchy. And then for religious revivalists, this new birth could come without approval from established churches or the learned clergy. And together, they're going to cultivate this habit where there's this politics of permission, right, where ordinary people are expected and encouraged to judge ideas and leaders for themselves. And this is really groundbreaking for the time, but it's going to become pretty combustible and lead to a lot of conflict in the 1760s.
You can hear echoes of all of this, right? So you've got the the classic showdown between the old lights and the new lights, where they have these debates about church order. And this sounds a lot like later fights over parliament and colonial assemblies. Right? We've got these older ideas that are fading and newer ideas that are brightening and challenging these established principles. You've got voluntary associations among these revivalists. And really, these voluntary associations look a lot like what will eventually become committees of correspondence, where people are talking and asking questions and daring to judge those in power. In both cases, it's people organizing horizontally rather than relying on top-down information and orders.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And you know what? Something else that Ms. Keltner, you said a second ago when you said learned clergy.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a great band name?
The now opening
The Learned
for
Clergy.
Bruce Springsteen, the Learned Clergy.
What kind of music would it be?
It's going to be a mixture of, I think, like Gregorian chants
Right.
and
I think
Maybe
death
80s
metal
hip hop?
too.
yeah,
okay.
80s hip hop and Gregorian
chants
And death
80s
metal.
and death metal. Yeah.
Yep.
Because you had to have the part where the vocalist is like Jonathan Edwards and he's screaming so ferociously that the people in the audience are wetting themselves.
And and that's another thing about the First Great Awakening that maybe we didn't cover. And I'm sorry, I forgot that chronology
Matters.
So the First Great Awakening is happening in the 1730s and 40s in the colonies. Excuse me. And then the Enlightenment is really starting to impact the colonies starting in the 1740s, and it will obviously move through the 50s and 60s and into the Revolutionary period. But the First Great Awakening is dominated by emotion. That emotion is really what these new light preachers like Jonathan Edwards, they're trying to reveal to their parishioners to get them more devoted to religion, and because they had felt that devotion and that piety had really started to decrease since the early colonial days.
Yeah, and they wanted regular, average people to partake and participate in these revivals. Anybody could stand up and testify. Anybody could stand up and preach even to the masses if they felt so compelled by the Holy Spirit. And instead of showing your salvation through good works or, you are rich, therefore God favored you, so all the elite must be favored by God, now you just had to show through your own devotion and emotion that you yourself had been touched by the Holy Spirit.
So now by the 1750s, empires collided in the Ohio River Valley. British colonists, land speculators, and native nations all had stakes in the fight. New France stretched from the St. Lawrence through the Great Lakes down the Mississippi. French forts and native alliances formed a chain that British settlers and speculators wanted to break.
And don't forget about the Iroquois Confederacy. They were long skilled at balancing European rivals. They navigated pressures with diplomacy and power, and they really worked to preserve autonomy and advantage in a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. So the war's early years, they go very badly for the British. Actually, the first battle is the Battle of Fort Necessity, where George Washington kind of makes his debut as a military officer, and it's a complete failure.
Yeah, I think we should say the war we're speaking of. I don't think we said it.
Oh, yeah, the French and Indian
French
War.
and Indian War.
Uh-huh.
Don't you know?
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Begins in 1754 with that Battle of Fort Necessity up in what would be around the Pittsburgh area today. And we have basically this dispute over the Ohio River Valley and the competition between the French and the British for that. But then you also add on various native tribes. Most of them are going to fight for the French. Some of them will also fight for the British. But the British, they really, it starts off badly for them and for their American colonists fighting with them. And then after the Battle of Fort Necessity, was his first name William? I don't know why I'm thinking William for his first. Braddock? Yeah.
It's a good chance it was.
It's a good chance.
Or was it James?
Or was it James? Anyway,
I don't know.
Braddock's defeat.
Just say General Braddock.
General Braddock, yes. His defeat near Fort Duquesne came under – what is this? What am I reading?
So you're saying no? Here,
Sorry, I got mixed up.
Hold on. Britain is struggling mightily.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yes, but then you need to say under William Pitt, Britain started to say, look, if we're going to win this thing, we need to start pouring a lot of money. And this is going to be important because England decides we're going to spend whatever it takes to win this thing. And they're going to go deeply into debt in order to shift the momentum.
I wonder if that's going to come back and bite them later.
It is. It turns out that when you put a lot of money into a war, at some point, you're going to have to pay it off. Right? So this is important.
William Pitt, we should say, he was the head of parliament.
Yes.
So he was the prime minister.
And I believe the namesake of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Duquesne and that whole area. Yeah.
What three rivers converge in Pittsburgh, you guys?
I think I know this.
I don't know. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I should.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Ohio. I know the
Ohio.
Ohio.
I know the Monongahela.
Yes.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I was hoping you wouldn't know Monongahela so I could say that one.
damn it. I'm sorry. Did I still?
I was hoping you would know the second one that I can't recall.
I was gonna
But
say,
of course, it
I
is the
thought-
Allegheny.
The Allegheny.
You
Yes.
said that as if you knew the answer.
I mean, I thought I did, and
then
then I
you
was
had
like,
to
wait,
look
do
it
I?
up.
Do I?
Well, I was
I
thinking
knew
of
Ohio and Monongahela.
the old stadium where the Pirates used to play. It's called the Three Rivers Stadium.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, the war's not going super well, but the decisive moment is going to arrive in 1759 at the Battle of Quebec. We've got the young, charismatic, dynamic General James Wolfe, who's going to lead.
Dreamy.
It's going to lead a daring nighttime ascent up the cliffs to the plains of Abraham, where he's going to catch the French under General Montcalm off guard. And,
They walk it and they talk it.
yes. And so both commanders actually are going to be mortally wounded from this battle. But Britain is going to seize Quebec. They're going to win and seize the city and basically take control of some really important strategic areas of Canada. And the war's outcome is kind of decided there. Eventually, it takes a while. These things do. They're going to meet in Paris because that's where everybody meets.
Yeah. And why not?
Have
Of
these
course.
kinds of conversations.
Wine, cheese. Let's go.
Right. And it's there that they're going to sign the Treaty of Paris in 1763. France basically says, you know what? We never wanted North America anyways. Forget it. We're out of here. And Britain is going to basically gain a huge expansion of their empire, but also a huge debt.
Oh, boy. And so victory didn't exactly bring peace on the ground. In 1763, you had Pontiac's rebellion, a broad native resistance led by the Ottawa leader Pontiac, and others attacked British forts and settlements, protesting British policies and encroachment. The British response included harsh warfare and ultimately a political line on a map, the Proclamation Line of 1763, which barred British settlement west of the Appalachians without Crown approval. For colonists eager to move west, it felt like a betrayal.
Yeah, I mean, you have American colonists who fought in this war, who died in this war, and they feel like they can't even really revel in the spoils of the victory because now they're being denied the right to move past the Appalachians because the British can't afford to get into more wars with natives. And so
and I think one important point is an economic interpretation of this is the people who are most angry are the George Washingtons, the wealthy planters and some of the elite bankers in New England who took out massive loans to purchase some of this land in the Ohio Valley, expecting that once the war was over, they could then turn around and sell it for a nice, tidy little profit. So when the Crown prevents settlement into the Ohio Valley, they basically are putting a lot of colonial elites in a really bad financial place.
yeah, and that's going to kind of set the stage for a lot of colonial elites and also non-elites to start uniting. And so to get to that, it's important that we rewind to 1754 when Benjamin Franklin proposes something called the Albany Plan of Union. And this was an idea, it would be a council of colonial representatives for their defense, also to navigate Indian affairs with a royally appointed president general. But ultimately, the colonies are going to reject it. London, the The mother country didn't really like this either, but still Franklin's famous rallying cry of join or die, that political cartoon that I'm sure if most of us saw it, you'd recognize it. The segmented snake really hinted at logic eventually that the colonists would embrace, that union in the face of common danger is really important. So in the 1750s, the nationalism, though, to sustain the union, it just wasn't there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, and the question, students always get this confused, don't they? Because they think that everybody thought this was a great idea and got on board, but many of the colonies just did not yet see themselves as wanting to belong to anything bigger, because that meant you may be responsible for dealing with a planter in Virginia didn't want to have to be necessarily in alliance with a Boston merchant.
Right.
They just seemed too far apart at this point. But Franklin, being the genius that he was, saw that this was going to be an important thing in the near future. So this is the turning point, right? The 7 Years' War. It bound colonists more tightly to the empire through pride and debt, but it also exposed these important fault lines. New taxation, standing armies, the prohibition on Western lands, and an increasing imperial authority. This stirs those Enlightenment and Great Awakening habits of dissent and questioning authority. And the 1760s will, and as we, spoiler alert here, it's going to get spicy.
Spicy.
All right, so let's talk about some of our themes from today, right? We've got information ecosystems that are really starting to rise in the colonies due to printing presses, pamphlets, sermons. These are really going to shape public opinion. And the Zanger moment about free speech, can the powerful be criticized without punishment? This still echoes today in debates over freedom of the press, disinformation, and, social media platform accountability. And the core question really persists: who gets to speak, who gets to be heard, and who decides the rules? Another theme we have, migration and labor, that indentured servants hoped for land and autonomy, and, enslaved Africans were coerced into lifelong labor. And our present isn't the past, but questions about labor rights, immigration, extraction, and who benefits from economic growth and the labor of others continue. And the colonial consumer revolution and the Atlantic webs, they rhyme with today's global supply chains, that everybody is sort of dependent on one another. And finally, faith, reason, and public life. These are going to produce questions and curiosities and wonderings through the Great Awakening and the Enlightenment, right? That heart and religion and reason, though, they can all coexist. And today, civic arguments still navigate moral conviction and scientific evidence. How do, plural societies, how do we navigate these complexities, and what happens when authority, whether it's religious authority or governmental authority, meets with common people and grassroots mobilization?
Yeah, these are big questions, and this is why this part of American history starts to really get interesting, because we can see so many connections with the past. All right, this has been a great episode. At least I think it's been a great episode.
I think I did a really good job of not using the sound effects.
Yeah, maybe use one now for the applause.
I think, I don't know what this one is, so I kind of want to try it. You ready?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh,
okay. Didn't know that was coming.
Nice.
This feels, it's like a celebratory.
Oh, yeah.
And today's
Oh,
Friday.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're at a party. We're at a party.
Okay, great. So that was a good way to end things.
That was great.
Thanks for tuning in to A Push for All. If you liked the episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or YouTube. Leave us a review. Send us a message on Instagram at A Push for All.
Until next time, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.